This is a 1985 Land Rover 90, a car most people know simply as a Defender. This isn't a Defender though, this is the Land Rover 90 introduced in 1983. The story of the Land Rover is just far too long to include in one video, so this particular video will be on only this iteration of the best 4x4 by far. In 1983, Rover replaced the Series 3 Land Rover with the 90, the 110 and the 127, each signifying the wheelbases of their respective cars. This being a 90, its wheelbase is close enough to 90 inches. It's actually 92.9, but 90 sounds better than 92.9. This car was never actually meant to be made. Rover were working on a replacement for the Land Rover in the late 70s, known as the Rover SD5, but that never came to fruition due to the stupidly bad financial situation at British Leyland at the time, which meant that they refreshed the Series 3 Land Rover to become this, the 90. There are a few things that changed from the Series 3 Land Rover, the main of which being from the outside, the full-length bonnet and new grille, although this isn't an original grille, so that's a really bad representation. But you'll see under the bonnet there's a massive blank space from where they extended the front end of the 90. You also get a new windscreen, you get a new interior, and you get these wheel arch extensions because they extended the track of the 90 compared to the Series 3. Mechanically, the 90 comes with permanent four-wheel drive, a 2-speed transfer box, both of which came straight from the Range Rover, just to make the Land Rover a little bit more refined than the Series 3, bring it a little bit more up to date. The 90 also gained coil springs compared to the leaf springs of the Series 3, along with a lockable centre differential, both things that made the Land Rover better off-road and also much more nice to drive, better ride quality and also better handling. But then again, I don't know how much vigorous driving you're going to be doing in an off-road car like this, but oh well. And that isn't diff oil there on the ground, that is indeed diesel. There are a number of choices of engine under the bonnet for the 90. This iteration was available with 2.25 litre 4-pot petrol and non-turbo diesel engines, both later upgraded to 2.5 litres. A turbocharged 2.5 litre diesel, which is this one, and the venerable old 3.5 litre Rover V8 petrol. These engines meant power outputs were between 62 and 134 horsepower. You can see here perfectly the lengthening of the front end that went on between the Series 3 and the 90, just this massive swathe of space between the radiator and the fan. This car would have originally had a 4-speed manual. You can also choose a 5-speed manual that was available in 2 different iterations, but this one has a 5-speed 200 TDI gearbox as well as a 200 TDI radiator, so that is a little bit thicker than the original. And yes, this car has been resprayed, hence overspray everywhere, but then again it is so muddy under here because the owner of this car takes it off-road pretty much all the time, as you can probably see by the state of the sides of it, and it's also his daily driver. He owns a number of cars, and he has owned Golfs, Polos, a couple of Fords as well, but this is the only car he says that he's ever been able to guarantee will always start. As much as Land Rovers have a reputation for falling apart and breaking all the time, they will last forever if they're maintained. As I've said, this particular engine is a 2.5 litre turbo diesel. It's the 19J engine with a Garrett T2 turbocharger over there, 8 valves, push rod operated, fuel injection, and 85 brake horsepower, but most importantly 150 pound-feet of torque at only 1800 RPM, so plenty of pulling power. This is a period when Rover started realising how they could market the Land Rover to recreational buyers, something that Jaguar Land Rover really rely on to this day. The more basic pickup and van versions, like this one, were still distinctly utilitarian, yet the ones with the back windows started to be tarted up year on year, with plusher seats, more equipment, etc. and very quickly the UK caught onto the US obsession with recreational SUVs, what became known as the Chelsea tractors. Now here's where that switch to coil springs really comes in, making the Land Rover a little bit more hospitable. So it wasn't so far-fetched for families to start using the Land Rover as an everyday vehicle, which became integral to the long-lasting nature of this car, becoming a fashion statement overnight. All these changes to the car led to a huge sales turnaround in the mid-80s. Between 1980 and 81, the Land Rover lost 21% of its global sales on the previous year due to poor reliability record of British Leyland and much more modern alternatives such as the Toyota Land Cruiser and things like that. But the 19110 kind of helped turn that around. Rover modernised the production techniques, bringing part supplies in-house to the Solihull factory and adopting new slick advertising techniques, like that brilliant advert of the Land Rover 90 climbing a dam from, I think, 1985 or so. Even though the car didn't do it, it was a winch and it was completely fake. It's a great advert nonetheless.
Next time you're late for work, it's worth remembering that nothing gets in the way of a Land Rover. The best 4x4 by far.
Now we're sat inside the 90, there's one thing that is really important to the modernisation of this car, and that is down here, wind-up windows. Fantastic. Something that brought the Land Rover kicking and screaming into the late 60s in 1983. Apart from that, you've got basic dials, speedo, you have your fuel gauge and your coolant temperature gauge. You have all your various warning lights. I think these dials were Land Rover only, whereas these stalks, this one, which is fucked, but that one is intact. That one's a lot better. These are typical British Leyland stalks of the time. But this interior is still very, very utilitarian, despite the fact that it was updated. And again, this gearbox is from a 200 TDI, not a 90. The handbrake on this one doesn't work, so yes, you can just do that and nothing really happens. The pedals are in the oddest position known to man, and this one doesn't have a rubber on it, but you know, that's just how they are. This bonnet release as well, I don't think is original, and neither does the owner, but you never know with these cars just how British Leyland designed them. You know, the design improvements weren't necessarily the best done. But you have standard rear view mirror. I think that isn't original, but I'm not 100% sure. You get sun visors with no mirrors in them. And on the passenger side, no, you do get a mirror on the passenger side. There you go, that's luxury. No sound deadening on the roof. These seats obviously aren't original. I'm not sure where they're from, and neither's the owner, although that one obviously isn't fastened in properly. But they might be from a Honda S2000, but probably not. Again, exposed wiring, holes, rust, fan control for a heater that doesn't work, and your heater direction controls and heater on the other side. You've got this fantastic big steering wheel. Despite this car having power steering, it still has this enormous steering wheel, which I really love the design of. It is very Austin Rover of the time. Your wipers, you get your wash, if you push in like that, speed 1 and speed 2, no intermittent on this. You have these switches down here, if it will focus, there you go, for your hazard lights, which don't work, heated rear window, which also doesn't work, and I believe your lights, I would guess they're lights anyway. That's fog lamp, because 1985 You are legally required by law to have a rear fog light, and over here are your indicators, left and right, and there you go, there's the display, and you push in for your horn, which I don't believe works. And there is your I don't know, I think that is, no, actually they're the lights, I believe. And there's your flash and push back for your permanent main beam. So they are not the lights, actually no, they look like they are instrumental illumination. You know, it would help if I did my research, but it shows you the quality of this car. There is a bottle of .4 brake and clutch fluid there, because that's really necessary. These vents open, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to open them with one hand, but there you go. Vents open on the front, which you'll be able to see, which is a fantastic thing. Stops the car being stuffy ever, just lets fresh air into the cabin. Here is your diff lock and your transfer box, and of course, being the 80s, you have an ashtray up here. But apart from that, there's not really much else. You get these door locks, which are typical British Leyland of the time. Those interior door handles, which are very British Leyland of the time. Door pulls, which are Metro door pulls. Window winders, which are Metro window winders. And every other Land Rover of the time. This centre console is custom made, which is fantastic actually. It's trimmed quite as much as it's filthy, and there's some unquestionable fluids in there. This is custom made by my mate Austin, who owns this car, and it's fantastically made. But yeah, you get this warning down here. That's very cool. If you want to read that, you can pause it now. You also get these things here. I don't know whether they do anything at all. I should have done my research. But also these fantastic Land Rover rubber mats, which are typically dirty. And this one, which is completely destroyed. And also this car did used to be an open back Defender. Well, I nearly said Defender then, not a Defender, a Land Rover 90. This car used to be an open back, but was converted. And that just shows just how easy these cars are to modify and work on, take apart. You know, this is the reason these cars are the perfect farm vehicle, because not only will they last forever if you look after them, even if they do fall apart, but they will also always be super modifiable. There are loads of part suppliers out there. So yeah, there's a little look around the interior. Just another quick note, in keeping with the great design and great quality of this British Leyland vehicle, this door handle here is in the worst spot for a door handle ever. That isn't focusing, right below it, the window winder. But when we open the door, that's gone, so the door just swing as far as you want it to go. One brilliant thing I've just seen here is, if the lighting is correct, that's a warning for an airbag, something that this car never had. So these sun visors are obviously not from a 90, they are from something later. You know, most probably a post 1990 Defender. But yeah, this car obviously doesn't have an airbag in there. One thing that changed between the Series 3 Land Rover and the 90 was the door handles. On the Series 3 you got this kind of door handle, which was retained for the rear door of the 90. I'm not going to open the rear door because it's ridiculously hard to open, but in the back you have the traditional Land Rover benches, so you can get as many soldiers in here as you like. And obviously Austin uses this car as his daily driver, and you can tell what kind of stuff he does by all those tools. Also, or maybe that's actually just to get this car started in the morning, but you never know. True British Leyland quality there and here and pretty much all over this car, but it's obscured by all the dirt. So a couple more notes before we go out for a drive. Yes, those drive shafts are leaking everywhere, but it works, and so Austin isn't doing anything, because if you fix all the problems, only new ones will come. So if you always leave it with at least one problem, you'll never get any more. At least that's the thinking anyway. And yes, of course, this does have a white wing on it. It shouldn't, obviously the wing should be body colour, and it should also have an arch on the end of it. But this car was involved in a little scrape, and I'm going to put up some pictures on the screen that just show how easy it is to take this car apart and reassemble bits, even after a little shunt like this one had. And that's the reason this has a white wing. But Austin does say he's going to respray this wing, but it's been on there for months and months and months now, but it works, and so that's all that really matters. And that's why Land Rovers are not the best daily drivers, but why wouldn't you daily drive it when it's this cool? And if you're wondering where a Land Rover lives, it is in this place. Constantly being filled up. And if you hadn't already noticed, there is mud absolutely everywhere, even inside the car, and there are bolts and shit in there. Now, if only you could smell what was going on right now in this car, because it's just the most visceral experience of motoring you could ever possibly imagine. Land Rover life. And again, Land Rover life. Do you like this word? You got washed? No. And that's how you wash your windows in a Land Rover. After our little muddy adventure, I'm going to leave that one here. So thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz. And hopefully I'll see you in another video.